Hey everyone, fascinating discussion today, diving into the world of telco software and with some real distinguished experts and innovators in the field at RT Brick. Gentlemen, how are you?
Yeah, very good. Thank you, Evan. Nice to be here.
Well, good to
Lovely.
have you both here. You have really interesting mission, interesting backgrounds. Before that, maybe some personal introductions. We have Hannes from RT Brick, CTO. Hannes, how are you? Maybe share a little bit about your bio and background and journey to RT Brick.
My standard introduction is my name is Hannes Gredler. I've been building and supporting routers for 25 years. I always tell my wife I'm no good for anything else. And I've been doing that 50 years for Juniper Networks and now since almost 10 years for RT Brick now.
Amazing journey, amazing company, distinguished engineer. That's quite a role at a company like Juniper. And Richard, yourself.
Yeah, I'm a sort of router background guy as well. I've been at Juniper for I know a decade, Cisco for a few years before that, and either side of that, various sort of small startups and large telcos. So I've been on the operator side as well as the vendor side as well.
Amazing. So let's start, Richard, with you. I mean, your mission is disruption of traditional networks, challenging the traditional network infrastructure. Disaggregation is a key theme, but I guess the question is why? Things seem to be
Mhm.
working. They got us through the pandemic. This broadband
Yeah.
connection is fine. Why do we need disruption now in the space, Richard?
No, it's a good question. And I suppose to some extent we could kind of struggle on as we have been. The networking world hasn't really changed significantly since the arrival of IP and internet networking sort of back in the 90s. We've built faster routers and they've got or routers if you're on your side of the pond, and they've got bigger and hungrier and use more power, and that's sort of been okay. And we could carry on like that, I think, truth be told, but it's getting more and more expensive. And every now and again, every few decades, something kind of happens. A few decades ago, it was IP, and everybody sort of at the time was kind of like, well, why do we need this? All this old, PSTN stuff was working okay, and ATM, and it turned out IP was quite useful. And we're now at a world where to deliver what everybody wants to consume is just getting very expensive, and it's getting very
Mm.
inflexible from a telco perspective. You make a decision on a platform today, and you find 7, 8 years down the road, you still can't move off that platform because you're committed to that hardware cycle of a new chassis that you bought 8 years ago is now driving you to buy a new line card 8 years later, and you can't really move away from it. So I think the two key things really are cost and flexibility. Uh, there are other things I'm sure we'll get onto as well. I think perhaps automation is another kind of area which if people are looking to disaggregation as well and kind of saying that could be it. Maybe we should have some fresh start here if we want to automate like we'd like to.
Well, fresh starts are always good. And you talk about disaggregation. That's a term of art that's been around for a while, Tanas. What does it mean for network providers, and how do you support the transition to disaggregated networks? Maybe start with the definition as well for some who may not be, deep in the
I
weeds.
mean, I should probably go first. Once we saw here the opportunity, so this was somewhere in 2013, 14. I'm still being at Juniper and always having conversation with our hardware developers there. And at some point, there was an element of concern coming up because merchant silicon vendors, just like Broadcom, for example, they were actually putting out a very good silicon with all the functionality that you need to build a good IP MPLS router. So we were just not just amazed by the feature and price point of those chips, but also by the feature velocity, how fast those guys have been made advances from generation to generation. And if you just draw up here the trajectory to the top right, you already could see here it is a bit of an interception course. and we thought, if finally there would be an ecosystem, right? System OEMs, chip vendors. There needs to be somebody who writes actually the software, the routing NOS, signaling NOS, and as Richard has mentioned, also something that has a fresh start from an automation point of view. And welcome. This is why and how we have started RT-Brick.
And if I could chip in a bit there as well, I mean, for if we have people tuning in that are kind of still kind of going, what does disaggregation mean? At its basic level, it's what we saw in computing sort of 40, 50 years ago, where before that you used to buy your integrated word processor, and it was a big box that sat in the corner of the office with a screen and a keyboard and software included. And of course, now we're quite used to the idea that the computing power, whether that's storage or processing, and the software that runs on it come from two different places. And that's not been true in networking, especially in telco networking. So you've had to buy your big piece of iron with your software integrated into it from the same vendor. And at its heart, disaggregation is breaking that model and making it more like computing. So you buy your open switch, which in itself does nothing for you. It's just hardware from one vendor, and then you buy your software from another vendor, run it on the switch, and hey presto, you've turned that switch into a cell site router or a broadband network gateway or a core router or whatever you want it to be.
Yeah, it's a fantastic vision. And you also have a new OS, RTOS. First of all, what is it? How is it different? I assume better than other network operating systems out there. Also, why? There's Linux, which is widely deployed, and everyone knows and understands. What are some of the benefits of RTOS, Hannes or Richard?
Hannes, I'll let you go on that one.
Yeah, fine. Um, First of all, the term network operating system is a bit of a misnomer, right? It means there is just a little bit of routing and some CLI packaged together. This is not really the reality of modern automation workflows. So what you really have to do is start with a NOS, with an OS, with a standard Linux-based OS, in our case, Ubuntu, from the start, right? And build here several layers. So just as the data center guys run HTTP and MySQL on that Ubuntu base layer, we do run daemons, which are server side applications that run BGP and ISAS and subscriber termination and whatnot. Now, the good news is because we have really this Linux first approach, right? All your automation workflow, Puppet, Chef, all those things just work out of the box and can easily be integrated into the automation framework that you may or may not yet have.
Got it. And I assume this is part of your involvement in the open networking movement, environment. I'm not sure what you call it. New standards in the industry. What's your take on open networking and your contribution there?
One of the common themes that we actually get from customers is to say, look, I have my Linux environment. It's fantastic. I love it. I know how to patch it. If you want to do anything in addition to that, fine, good. But do not really gatekeep anything, right? Let me install my own software there. Let me install my own containers out there. Just get out of the way and do not really try to insert yourself or your product management team in order to get features and functionality done. So what we try to do is open up everything, right? So access to the data plane, access to telemetry, access to stats, access to the configuration store. Really everything is an API first thing.
Mm.
And I would say that is why we love open networking so much. We can then combine some of our application, BGP, ISIS, subscriber management, with things like Prometheus and time series databases and Grafana frontends, right? And all those things just
Mm.
work out of the box, right? We do not really force our customers to really go through the means of outdated protocols like SNMP and things like that.
Okay, interesting. Sounds intriguing. And, Richard, you've been in this industry a long time, probably as long as I have. I started in paging, so I don't know, the zero G,
Yeah,
maybe.
yeah,
Um,
I like
but,
that.
talk about the state of 5G. I think it's exciting. I think with SA, standalone networks, and RedCap, there's still a lot of innovation happening. But what say you? How do you see yourself playing in the 5G plus world?
Yeah, I mean, we've been drawn largely by, I guess, our initial large customer deployments more into the fixed network. But the 5G
Mm.
network and the mobile network is a great use case also for disaggregation, and it's sort of important for, I guess, us as the in the vanguard of the disaggregated industry, that it's not just happening in one place. So we tend to be deployed in the fixed network edge, broadband networks, that kind of thing. Um, Other people are focusing in the RAN and in 5G, and then there's other people focusing in the core network. So it's happening really throughout the whole telco stack and in every use case, for similar reasons, for those same things that we've discussed, openness and flexibility and cost reduction as well, because the hardware is a fraction of the price. So yeah, I think all aspects of telco networks are struggling with the same overload of traffic. We're all sitting around expecting to consume our information on video, just as we're doing right now, and that's very intensive. And obviously, there's entertainment there and a whole new raft of things that we haven't even thought of coming along. So yeah, that's hitting the mobile network, and they're doing very similar things than we're doing in the fixed network.
Yeah, no, fixed is exciting. All the growth in the US, for example, is coming from fixed wireless access. I have a backup fixed wireless to this broadband cable connection, so it's all
Mhm.
very exciting. And Hannes, you've built some of the biggest routers in the world, giant service provider routers at Juniper. Maybe talk about scale. I mean, we seem to be scaling well, but how do you scale to the next level, whatever that is, a trillion endpoints or something like that? And what does that mean for customers?
I mean, first of all, what actually has happened also in data centers about 10, 15 years ago was a very good recipe of scaling, right? Following here a little bit that Google map reduce approach by breaking down larger units into smaller discrete units. Um, the networking team at those data center providers were doing a similar thing, right? Rather than going with big monolithic chassis and hard to maintain superclusters, they went actually down with small two rack unit type of devices, right? But really massive interconnects and building essentially two, three-stage cloth networks, and therefore really even scaling up normal commodity switches to 100, 200, now more than 700 terabit fabrics. That is our answer of the disaggregated world towards scaling the data plane, but also scaling the control plane, right? Since we had a fresh start implementing all of our control plane protocols, we could also have a fresh view, right? So even if you take, let's say, hundreds of BGP full feeds in, the software has just been well engineered to support those cases. Sometimes redoing things, but redoing things at nice 64-bit processors, and where no memory constraints are in place, that you have to do all those optimizations, which renders the software after a decade almost unmaintainable. This is here our response to control plane scaling.
I think as well on scale, it's obviously you sort of focus on the initial kind of big challenge, which is how do you get greater scale? How do you get bigger and more and faster? But actually scaling down is really important. And that's something that disaggregation is particularly good at. So in telco world, there's a lot of interest in distributing compute and storage nearer the user for things like IoT. And generally, even if you're watching your Netflix show, whatever you're doing, you want to access that from as near as possible. So if you take all your traffic into the core of the network, into some huge data center, you're really burdening the network to get all of that traffic across it, when you could be perhaps feeding it from very close to the subscriber. And in order to do that, then you need what used to be a big core function at a smaller scale, at a lower cost, that you can put maybe not quite in a street cabinet, but pretty close to it. And it turns out disaggregated hardware is really good for that as well. And the hardware guys that we end up running on, produce really small, but really powerful switches that can sit on outdoor environments, and we can make that switch into whatever it needs to be.
Fascinating.
I would also say on scaling down, we had an interesting experiment and experience on our first and lead customer, which has been Deutsche Telekom. And they wanted us, based on our NOS, to build traditional subscriber termination functionality, as well as the full routing stack. And the routing stack here, we could do all the scalability things and fast policy execution and whatnot. But at the subscriber side, we said, well, how many subscribers do you want to terminate, right? 128K, 256K. And they actually said, no, actually 20K is good enough because we have a different deployment model. We really want to break this down and really keep the blast radius small. Some of those platforms, they do not really have, let's say, fully redundant control planes. So it is important to us that if the light goes out, if a box breaks down, which luckily so far hasn't, then the blast radius is not too big. So it was, as Richard has told, it was equally important to scale the software properly down as well.
Yes, fit for purpose. Very impressive. Well, you let the cat out of the bag with Deutsche Telekom. I hope they allow you to talk about them, but that's pretty impressive. Maybe talk about your customers, where you are in rollout and adoption, and how does a customer get started with you? Can you just download the software and start testing?
Kind of. I mean, we do like to talk to them. It's not completely self-service. And yes, Deutsche Telekom kindly are public about their deployment with us, which is very flattering. And I mean, obviously, everybody kind of knows Deutsche Telekom is the major German incumbent, but they are the biggest operator in Europe. So for a small startup, that's not the obvious place to get going in the telco world. So it's been quite a journey, and we're grateful for their support and encouragement. And but yeah, we've got other deployments from again, actually in Germany, ranging from the large to the small. We've got a small service provider that recently went public with us as well, who are only servicing tens of thousands of subscribers rather than having to support millions. So we've got a range. Yes, people can come to us and download the software, and if they've got the appetite to put it in the network, we'll support them in doing that and do a trial. Normally, they have to buy a switch or two. Sorry, Hannes, go on.
I just wanted to say, usually as a startup, it is now custom to basically make your documentation freely accessible and training
Mm.
courses, all that is available. So if you just want to have a look and feel, just go to www.rtbreak.com and look on the content page. There you find documentation, training material, get started guides, and all of that. So it's
Wow.
pretty intuitive.
Wow, what a brave new world. And what's next? What can you share in terms of your roadmap and future through the end of this year, next year? What are you focused on
We've just,
as a product and
yeah, I mean,
solution company?
we started focusing with the broadband network gateway, which is a specific kind of use case,
Mm.
important use case for fixed broadband networks. Basically, the first router that you hit because you come out from your home network in the public network. But we've recently added sort of multi-services to that. We've added a layer 2 Ethernet service capability, and we've just added something called CG-NAT, carrier grade network address translation, which
Mm.
overcomes the fact that we don't have enough IPv4 addresses in the world anymore. Some countries struggle with that more than others, but I think even in all markets, that's an issue. And so the plan is to, add more use cases and add more services. I mean, we've really got a robust MPLS routing stack. So wherever routing is needed in the network, we can adopt to it. So I don't know, Hannes, if you wanted to say any more than that without obviously kind of.
I think a lot of asks that we got recently is about mid-haul transport, right? So what has been happening in the pluggable optics world, especially with coherent detection, is just short of a little wonder, right? You can, with OpenZR, ZR Plus, without professional transmission systems from ADVA or Siena, you can actually bridge now 500-kilometer gaps, right? There is
Mm.
100 gig, 120-kilometer optical shots for no big money. And we see actually now a lot of those mid-haul transmission systems getting replaced by just white boxes with some of those pluggables. And this is where we're going to put a lot of emphasis in the next 2 quarters.
Wow,
Optical
fascinating. I think
pluggables
satellite.
is also interesting on the downstream path. So you remember maybe a company called Tibit, right? They had this pluggable GPON optics. So we actually see more and more requests for that. So it is now really augmenting that solid router base that we have with long haul, mid haul optical transport towards the core. And also sort of integrate OLT functionality within the bounds of the same switch, right? That is what we can clearly see. There's a lot of effort to integrate all those functions into one box.
All super impressive. Well, great time to be investing in the next generation network. What do you guys have on your agenda for the rest of the year? Any meetings or events? I know I'll be at Mobile World Congress in Las Vegas. It's a big one here in North America. What's on your radar?
Yeah, we got a big one coming up as well here in Europe. We're at Network X in Paris, which used to be the Broadband
Mm.
World Forum. Now these days it's called Network X. It's generic kind of telco tech show. That's second week in October. So yeah, we'll hope to meet a few of our customers and prospects there from all around the world. It's fairly international. So yeah, that'll be the next time they let us out of the door.
And also
Well,
we
they
mix
let
them
you out here.
in.
Thanks so much.
And
I'm sorry, Hannes, go
actually,
ahead.
we actually also mix and mingle at national operator forums and RIPE and NANOC meetings, right? That's usually where you find us.
Great. Well, maybe we'll have a chance to come face to face in person. Thanks so much, guys, for joining. Great work. Really interesting future with network disaggregation and beyond. And thanks for spending the time.
Well, thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
All right. Thanks, everyone, for watching and listening. And reach out to RT Brick for more data and insight and information. Thanks.